All right, guys, thank you for joining for my session tonight. I'm going to be talking about that subject that I love talking about the most, Intune or Microsoft Endpoint Manager, as it has been rebranded, but I still use the name Intune. It's a bad habit, I know. For enterprises, so I'll be giving a few of my tips on how I set some things up to make your life easier as an Intune administrator. I have a whole lot of more tips, but I couldn't fit them all in the session. So if it's interesting enough for the people, I'll make a version 2 of it also. It can have a follow-up. A little bit about me. I'm Tim Hermie. I work as a freelance consultant, modern workplace architect, but I'm working together with the collective consulting, together with other great minds like Michael van Orenbeek, Thijs Lecomte, to name a few. And 90% of my time goes with traveling with, working with them. I'm Microsoft MVP Enterprise Mobility since 2 years. So that means that my core knowledge or my technical expertise is really in the endpoint management and security stack. I'm also a Windows Insider MVP since last year. I have the Most Valuable Mentor Award from Microsoft Certified Trainer for a few years now. If you want to follow me on Twitter, my tag is there. Some personal things. I always like to add something personal to a workshop or a session. It's a nice icebreaker. I love skateboarding. I haven't done it in years, but I love skateboarding. I go hiking a lot, mountain wall climbing, traveling, and I have a son, Leo, who takes up a lot of time also. All right, let's get on with it. The first part, when you start with setting up Intune or Endpoint Manager for a bigger company or a bigger organization, and what is big for me, I already start implementing this if they have 200 or 300 seats. But you will see that the added value is really big for larger companies. The ground rule, or with what we start always, is the governance. We need some governance. Why do we need some governance? Because if we don't start with it at the start of our project, if we don't plan it and follow the path that we provide, put in some governance, some naming conventions. If we don't do that, after a while, we won't find our way through the woods or through the forest. What has been said, what do I mean with governance? I mostly been talking about naming conventions. Make sure you have some naming conventions. This is an example from a client of me, an international client who has headquarters in Belgium, but is spread all around the world, even in the US. So you can see I'm using a strict naming convention here. The global will stand on policies that are global, that are for all subs, the headquarters, but all the subs in other countries will also get this policy. I will always put in the OS, Windows 10. It sucks because I have to change it to Windows 11 soon, so I know. The third part is, what will I configure? Browser, the M365 app suite, the operating system. Is it part of my security baseline? The last part, or the next to last part, will give you info on what I'm configuring. And then you see at the end that I have some rings there. I'll be talking about that later because I'm using this ring method in my whole project, but you can see it here already. So these are all policies, global policies that will be deployed tenant-wide to all subs, to all countries. These are the settings that they will have to have. Yeah. If you look at another example, you can see then that we have BE configuration profiles. BE1 is a specific location in Belgium, BE3 also. We also have Czechia there, Germany, Denmark. This way, for me, it's easy to see where does this policy go to. I want to see it immediately. I don't want to click in it and waste a lot of time by clicking it. For me, this is very important. Start with a good governance from the beginning. It will only give you added value if you go further in your project. This is for the configuration profiles, like you can see. I do it for everything. Configuration profiles, the endpoint security settings, compliance policies, I have a strict naming convention that I use for all my clients. It makes my life much, much easier once a project goes a few months further. Yeah. I also use this in my group. I have some group naming conventions. As you can see here, also an example group, Microsoft Endpoint Manager. This will be a Windows 10 group, DD. I have 4 options here: DD, dynamic device; SD, static device; DU, dynamic user; SU, static user. So I immediately see with the group name what this group stands for. I don't have to look into it, look into documentation. I have this in all my projects. It's make my life a lot easier. And these are all dynamic groups that you see here. You will also see in a later part of the session why I'm using these dynamic groups, also to make my life easier, of course. There's another example. Here we have group mem apps, so not a Windows 10 group. You can see here static user. So this is an application group where we put in our users manually. It's an application that's not used for a lot of people. So this is some manual work. What you also can do is group mem apps dynamic user, and this will be a dynamic user group. This is also some neat trick here. You can create dynamic user groups for your Office deployment. You just create a group that populates and that looks at the licenses that are assigned to people. So in this example, the company has business licenses as well as enterprise licenses. So business premium, enterprise E3. The people who have the enterprise license assigned and Office activated will get that package. The people that have the business premium assigned and it's activated in their license will get that deployed. You can also do this for project and Visio, that it will deploy next to the baseline package. So the people who have Visio activated or have the license will get it. What's easy or what's the good thing about this? You don't have any housekeeping. Just make sure you assign your license correctly and they will get the deployment afterwards. It will make your life easier when you go through it. So the first part that's really, really important is the governance. Start with a good naming convention. Pull it through in tenant-wide, do it everywhere, use it everywhere. I'll show you in my tenant also. So let's jump to my tenant. If we can go to devices. And also keep in mind that this session is meant for people who have some basic Intune understanding and knowledge. I'm not going to be explaining every blade I'm going to click open. So keep that in mind. If you go to configuration profiles, you'll see I had a lot of naming conventions through the years, but I finalized with these. Yeah, I already showed them in the slides. You can also see them that I'm pulling this through in my compliance policies. But if you go to endpoint security, this will also come back here. Yeah. Oops. These ones, for example. Not only here. If you go to the update rings, it should also be applied here. So it's tenant-wide that I'm using a naming convention just to make my life easier. All right. Let's go back to the slides. So make some governance, make some naming conventions, set it up. You can reuse it once you find one that suits your needs, and you can definitely reuse it for your other projects. What's the biggest gap for me in working with Intune and Azure AD? There is no structure in Azure AD. If we look at it in the on-premises, we have an Active Directory, we have an OU, so we have a lot of structure there. We have a lot of possibilities of assigning policies, group policies, but we don't have that in Azure AD. The world was flat, but Azure AD is also flat. But we can bring structure there if we abuse the group tags in Windows Autopilot, or is it really abusing? They provide us the option. So if we set it up correctly, we can bring structure in Azure AD for our devices, and it will all go automatically once it's been set up. So it will take some time setting up. So you will be putting in some effort in the beginning. But as the project goes further, it will make your life a lot easier. What do I mean with these group tag structure that I'm using in all my projects? And I'll give you an example. For the people who are working with Intune, you know, if you want to roll out a device with Windows Autopilot, your device has to be known in the Windows Autopilot service, or in the Intune dashboard, devices, enroll devices, Autopilot devices. The first step is just uploading your hash there, your serial or of your device, and you can give it a group tag. This is one of my basic sets of group tags that I'm using in all my projects. You can see we have a lot of dashes, but the characters between the dashes, they mean something, and we can query them in dynamic groups. And the combinations are limitless here and endless also. And this way, you will bring structure. Let me explain it a bit first. At place 1, so place 1 is the first character, I do my joint type. The A stands for Azure AD joint. The H stands for hybrid joint. So every group that gets tagged A will get an autopilot profile assigned that will be Azure AD joint. If you tag it with the H, they will get an autopilot profile assigned that will be hybrid joint. So this is some sort of automation already and some structure that you already bring. Then we have the dash. We don't query on the dash. We have place 3 and 4. If you can see in my example, BE is the ownership or the country. For what is this? You can populate your groups, your ownership groups or country groups automatically based on the 2 characters here. So it will look at the country codes. I have a shitload of dynamic groups. They will populate all automatically. And if I have specific configuration profiles for those countries, I don't have any manual work afterwards. Everything will go dynamically, automatically. Makes it easy. We have another dash. We have 2 options again. U or A, user or admin. Why is this important? When we create an autopilot profile, in the autopilot profile, we specify, does the user have to be deployed as a standard user or as a local administrator on his device? So this will also be important for the autopilot profiles. What does this mean? If I upload a device and I tag it AU, it will get the autopilot profile to roll out the device Azure AD joint with a normal user. If I make it an AA, it will roll out an autopilot device Azure AD joint with an admin user. So I'll have 4 autopilot profiles in this scenario. 2 for Azure AD joint because I have 2 options here. 2 for hybrid joint because I have 2 options here. The only thing I have to maintain are the group tags. All the rest goes automatic. Yeah. I have another dash. Then we have character 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. D, C, or P. And you can change the names if you want. This is what I'm using. Development, Canary. You can have pre-prod also, or production. But these are the terms that I'm using for my different rings or my different environments in my organization. If I give it a P, it will get in the production ring. So it will get in the latest ring. It will have no, if we do some changes on configuration, it will always be in the last ring. It will not get impacted. So most of the people will be in the production ring. Then we have 2 rings, our first line of testing, the development ring and the Canary ring. The first line of testing is always a development ring. We put in some IT people in there. The Canary ring, we put some more IT people in, but I also want 1 or 2 persons per department. We have to touch the whole organization in our testing. Yeah, we don't want, if we go through development and Canary with our Windows updates, but also with configuration changes, with Edge updates, with Office updates, for example, we can all align it with these 3 environments. But in production, we don't want any disturbance. Everything has to be tested in development or Canary. So we choose here what ring we want. If a user is in development, or you have one of the users from all departments that's in Canary, but he's sick of getting too much shit on his device and too much things broken, it's easy. You adjust the group tag, you make from the C a P, and he will get in the right group, and he will get all necessary configuration changes. This is something that will instantly, at least 30 minutes later, he will get it. Yeah. So this is also an added value. You can change them on the fly. Yeah. Then I have another dash, and that's my last one is device type. So you can have L for laptop, D for desktop, S for shared device, K for kiosk. And with these two, you can also couple autopilot profiles. Yeah. Or you can use them for your naming conventions, whatever it needs. Then I have another dash, because this is mostly the baseline I'm starting with, but it will vary from company to company, whatever fits their needs. You can make it as long as you want. I'm sure there will be a limit on it. You can create as many dynamic groups as you want. You can create one for the Azure AD joint, the hybrid joint, the Belgian, the German, the French devices. But you can also mix, if you want all Azure AD joint Belgian devices, you can query on those too. Yeah? This is how I bring structure, and this is the most important part, and it will take the longest time to build this up with your client. You have to come to an understanding. You have to fill in all the needs, because this is just the baseline. Mostly we go a lot further. What do I also add? If a client has more than one office in Belgium, for example, you can put here offices, BE1, BE2, BE3. The options are limitless. Whatever fits the need of that organization, you can use it in your group tag. So the group tag is the holy grail for me. It is what brings structure. You set it up. You have a lot of work creating all these dynamic groups, but you only have to do it once. And afterwards, everything will be dynamically. You won't have to do anything manually. And that's what we want as ITer. Yeah, we are all a bit lazy. We don't want to work too hard. If we can automate something, we will automate it for sure, or at least I will. So you put down your group tag structure, you can apply it. One side note, not if you change some options, not all options are having effect immediately. Yeah? If you change the ownership, it will have effect immediately, because if you change it from BE to DE, you will get all German configuration profiles instead of Belgian ones immediately. 30 minutes later, it will be changed. But if you change the U to an A, your user won't be an admin in a sudden on your device. It is only through the autopilot process that place 1 and place 6 will take part, and place 10 mostly also. Yeah. But you can add some values there that have effect immediately. So the environment, the ownership, and whatever fits your needs can have effect immediately in your project. All right. Next step to do is build all the dynamic groups. You can make combinations. I work a lot with exclusions also, and I'll show you in my demo. This will take the longest time, because we will have a shitload of dynamic groups. But create them, it will take time. Once you created them, you can export them, import them in the new tenant if you have the same naming convention, so you can reuse your work. There's no issue in that. How do my queries look? If you look at my first group, Microsoft Endpoint Manager, Windows 10, dynamic device. I love dynamic groups, all Azure AD joint devices. So this group will target all Azure AD joint devices. If you look back here, it will query on joint type, Azure AD, so it will query on the A. How does this query look like? You can always copy the first part. After the double dots here, it will start. So we will query on the A, we have a dash, and anything behind, I don't care. So everything that has an A as first character in their group tag will be in this group. Yeah? For the hybrid joint devices, this will be an H, for example. Yeah? This is just the beginning. Let's say we want to query something else. We want to query user type or environment. I'm not sure anymore what I put in my slides. Let's see. Production environment. We want to query all our production devices. How can we make that query? It's always the same. The double point, Our first character is a dot because it's any character. It can be a hybrid joint or an Azure AD joint. I don't care which joint type. I only care about the environment or the update ring. So a dot dash two dots, I don't care which country, dash dot, I don't care user or admin, dash P for production. Yeah. So a dot is any character. A dash will just be the dash. The two dots are two times any character. The P we will query on, dash star, anything behind the P I don't care about. Yeah, you can see it here very clearly. That way you can build up all your groups. Yeah? If you look at the group tag here, or the structure here, we can query on this, on this, on this, on this. I think you get the points, but we can also do combinations. What if I want a dynamic group that queries all Azure AD joint production devices? Let's go back to the last one. It will be easy. It will be a dash dot dot dash dot dash p. All Azure AD joint production devices. Yeah. But you can also make exclusions. So you can assign production devices and exclude the hybrid joints, and it will give you the same effect. Yeah. So you have to think about it. Do I need to make that group that queries two characters, or can I make it with some exclusions? And mostly, if you do the basic and you work with exclusions, you will get to where you need. I don't mix a lot in my queries. If you think a bit logically, you will get there. Let's go here, and I'll show you also in my tenant. So we go to the autopilot program, devices, and roll devices. I only have one device. It hasn't been rolled out yet. I know my tenant is a bit empty at the moment, but you can see here for demo purposes, it's enough. I have an Azure AD joint device. If I roll it out from Belgium, there will be a user on this device. In the production environment or the production ring, it will be a laptop. So the A and the U will be important for my autopilot profile. Like I said, I have Azure AD joint, hybrid joint, user and admin. So I'll have 4 profiles in this scenario. Yeah. If you go to the profiles, I'll have 4 profiles. And here you will see Azure AD joint will be assigned to my dynamic Azure AD joint group. This is a user profile, so I'll just exclude all admin devices. No need to make a new group that queries both. Just work with exclusions, think a little bit, but you will get there. For the Azure AD admin, I will do the same, but I will exclude the user devices. It's the same principle for the hybrids. It will be assigned to all hybrid join. We will again do an exclusion or all admin devices. So that way, you can create a whole lot of autopilot profiles. And trust me, I have clients with 20 autopilot profiles, but the only thing they have to maintain is the group tag. Yeah? Let's say this one has now assigned this profile, Azure AD Zone user profile. Let's say I want to roll it out hybrid joint. Let's just save it. Wait a bit. It has been saved. Let's just sync one time. Refresh. It can take some time. Let's just give it some time. I'll go through my slides again. We'll come back and you'll see it will have the hybrid joint profile in a little bit. Yeah. So you can adjust in the fly. And I'll adjust another one more. So we don't want production. We want it to have the canary. Let's go there. Let's sync again. Okay. Back to the slides. We're coming back to this. If I forget, please remind me. Let's go. First important thing, I'm gonna recap already. Governance, make sure you have a naming convention that you can use for everything. Second one, your group tag structure is the most important part of the whole process. Think about that structure, talk about it with your client. What are his needs? How does he see differences in deploying applications to departments? Is it to sites, to different countries, configuration? Talk about it with your client. You can do it in a workshop style, which I mostly do. A workshop of an hour, 2 hours. You brainstorm a little bit and you come together with a group tag. Third part is the security baseline. Really, really important for me. Let me explain you why. Can you mute, guys, if you're not speaking? Thank you. Why is a security baseline important? We don't want the attack vector of our devices to be too high. So for me, this is also something that I put a lot of effort in. Also know the security baselines that I make are based on the Microsoft security baseline, but not only on the Microsoft one. I will do an extra layer on top of it, and even we do a bit of collective, we do a third layer on top of it. That's a little bit of our secret sauce that I won't be explaining here, but I'll give away some of my secrets already. We want our devices to be secured. We all know the moment we are living in now. The hackers are everywhere. You really have to keep your devices secure. Also think about the zero trust concept, zero trust security. We trust nothing. We have zero trust. We don't trust the identity. We put MFA on it. We don't trust our devices. We lock them down. BitLocker security baseline. We don't trust our apps. We don't trust our corporate data. Everything has a layer. This is the layer of the device. Trust. How do I do it? Or how do I configure my devices? Easy. I always start at the top with my security baseline. Microsoft has a security baseline that you can use. Don't use it. I'll show you why, but don't use it. Yeah. We will use it. We just won't use the built-in one in Intune. We will remake it, but I will show you and tell you why. It's really important. But please spend some time creating a good security baseline. Yeah. I remake the baseline setting catalog and administrative templates. How do I make my other configurations? Because I have a strict order that I follow, and I only use a few things. At the top, you have my security baseline. I will deploy that to all my devices. This will always be a global setting. Think of my governance, my naming convention, GBL dash, it starts global, tenant-wide, the baseline is tenant-wide. No exceptions. Maybe for IT, a few, but no exceptions. All right. At the second part, we have our endpoint security. So security baseline is at top. Then I will fill it up with endpoint security. Everything that we can configure there, I will configure in endpoint security, not in configuration profiles. I won't configure BitLocker there or my AV settings, my attack surface reduction rules, all endpoint security features. Configure them there. And then I have three things left. I fill the gap up, so security baseline, endpoint security. I fill the gap up with setting catalog because I love settings catalog. What's not yet imported in setting catalog is temporarily filled up with administrative templates. And what I can't configure with these four, I will configure with a custom profile. I don't touch the other profiles anymore. So really easy for me. And it's a way of working. Yeah. We start with the security baseline. Making this will take up most of your time. We will fill the gap up with the endpoint security configuration. Then we will fill the gap up with setting catalog. Mostly these here are a few GPOs that I want to migrate because I don't like migrating GPOs. We're talking legacy. I mostly start with the greenfield configuration, but I will migrate the necessary GPOs like the appearance, the start menu, the wallpaper, the lock settings, the sleep settings. We will fill that up with settings catalog. If it's not in settings catalog yet, I will make an administrative template. And if I can't find it in these two, I will do it with a custom profile. But these are all the profiles that I use. I don't touch anything else anymore. Yeah. How do I make my security baselines? And there are a lot of options. I can just give you my advice on how I do it. I always base myself on the Microsoft security baseline. Also know that per Windows feature update, you will have a new security baseline. So know that you will have work each 6 months at the clients that you are doing, which can also be interesting if you are working as a consultant, because you'll have recurring business every 6 months. With Windows 11, it will be once a year that we'll have the feature update. So once a year, you will have to update your security baseline. I start with the Microsoft recommendations. You can find them in Intune, and I will show you. But you can also download the security and compliance toolkit from Microsoft. The ADMXs are in there, open them, see the settings, remake it with setting catalog, admin templates. It will work fine. On top of the security baseline of Microsoft, I will put an additional layer. I put two examples here. You have the NIST or the CIS. There are two internet security frameworks that provide you either way, paying or non-paying. You have to look into them. But they have also security baselines. They have Intune security baselines, Windows 10 security baselines, M365 apps. So I'll put this on top. Take notice or take care if you are working with these, or if you will Google them and look them up. You will have different levels. Level 1 will be the highest. Take care. Yeah. Also, if you are creating your security baselines, never deploy them in production. You will also see when we go a little bit further in my session that I don't do any adjustments in production. We always will go through the phases: development, Canary, production, right? But I don't only have a Windows 10 baseline. I also have a Microsoft 365 app security baseline, again, based on the Microsoft security baseline with one of the centers that I found a lot of useful information. There also is an Edge baseline, same principle here. Yeah. So how do I make a solid security baseline? We start with Microsoft. We put an additional layer on top. And if you have a lot of experience doing projects, you can put your own additional layer or additional flavor on top. That fits your needs. Yeah. Let me go in the demo. So if we go through the order at the first, and let me take my slides just for references wise, I always start with my security baseline. We have built-in security baselines here. Let me show you. Security baseline, and you can see them here, the 365 apps, the Edge, Defender for Endpoint also, security baseline for Windows 10 and later. Yeah. Let's see if I have a profile for one, but I don't use these. I'm just showing you why I'm not using these, all right? Let's open this. If you use these, you will have some issues later on. And why? Let me explain a little bit. Let's say that we deploy this one like it as it is. We put everything on yes and we deploy it to our end users. It can have a lot of impact. If you want to revert just one setting, let's say this is on yes, we want to disable it. Putting it on not configured will not change your setting. There's no on or off switch for some of these settings. So that's why I create my baselines myself, because if you go through setting catalog, and I'll show you how mine looks like. Security baseline, OS hardening. There, this will be this one. Let me see. Yeah, you can see I has one here, production, and I also have one here with the same name, admin templates, setting catalog. In this one, there are a few settings that weren't migrated yet, but the purpose or the target is that everything will be in settings catalog. So at the end, we will only be using settings catalog, endpoint, security, and custom anymore. Yeah. I'll show you this. And like I said, these are based on the Microsoft security baselines. Yeah. So you can see that these settings are pretty the same as what we saw at the beginning at Microsoft. What is the advantage here? We have an on-off switch and not an on, not configured switch, which does nothing. Yeah. You can block or allow. You can enable or disable. So if you have some deviations on your baseline, you can easily create a new profile or put some exclusions on this, and it will work. It will make your life easier. Yeah. I also have more flexibility recreating them. I put my own flavor together with them. I have a lot of options of settings that I can choose from. I don't like using the built-in ones. Yeah. Let me show you, for example, how a baseline looks like. And there are a whole lot of settings in there. Yeah. There. I'm not going to go over every setting. Yeah. Like I said, it's based on the Microsoft security baseline with an additional layer on top of it. This is the settings catalog. Then we have the administrative templates here. It will have a few settings here that aren't yet in settings catalog. Yeah. I also have a security baseline for my browser, for my Edge, Chromium. I have it for everything. M365 app security. And you can see that these are a whole lot of settings, but they will make your device secure. And you really need this in the times we are living now. You can't afford just deploying devices and putting no security on it. This is the first part of the job, the first priority. Create a solid baseline. Remember, once you create one baseline, you can reuse it for all your other projects. It's not that you have to recreate it every time again. Just export it, import it, but make sure every 6 months or every year you update your baselines. All right. I also put this in an Excel with some versioning behind it so that I can see which settings change, which don't change. You can also provide this to your clients. It will take a lot of work, I know, but it will be worth it. Trust me. So security baseline, we go back here, is always on top. Then I fill up with endpoint security. So I'll deploy and configure my AV settings here. These are still old naming conventions. Not everything is in my tenant yet, so don't mind it. Hub here. My disk encryption profiles, you can see these are here yet. Will be here. Firewall here. Endpoint detection and response. Nothing in there. Attack surface reduction will come in here. And account protection, hello for business, etc., will come in here. Yeah. So if you look at this again, security baseline at top, I'll fill up with endpoint security, and then I fill up. And if we look at the custom one, like these, we put location services on. We have some default configuration for our OS that is tenant-wide for every subco, for example. What is in here, for example, delivery optimization, really important. The start menu, storage sense, but these settings will vary or will differ per client. All right, the baseline will always be the same, and here you can do whatever you want or what your client needs. Let's check what's in here, for example. Site to zone assignment list, default search provider URL. We do the hide first run experience. We don't want that. Basic settings. It's like sort of a productivity baseline, or that's how we like to call it. Security baselines, productivity baseline to make your end users' life easier. They get single sign-on, they get the sync with Edge, everything is synced. I think you all know that. So again, to the slides, we start with security baseline, endpoint security. We fill up with setting catalog, and we have some administrative templates also probably for some default configuration. Yeah. What we can't find in these three, I'll fill up with custom. You can see a few custom settings here, but this is all that I'm deploying at the moment. No more legacy profiles, only settings catalog, administrative templates, custom, and the endpoint security plate. All right. Back to the slides. Really important for me, at least. And definitely look in all the options you have here from NIST or SIS, which baselines they are providing. It's really interesting to look in that material and play around a little bit. The power of the rings. I've been talking about it for a little bit now. Our environment. So we have our production ring, our development ring, our Canary Ring, but they are really, really important for me because I'm not only talking about Windows updates when I'm talking about rings, but I align everything with my rings. Everything has to be tested in these rings. If you look at the development ring, they will have the Windows updates, the inside the release preview. So they will get the latest feature update 1 month in advance. So we have 1 month of testing the Windows updates. I will deploy Edge for them, but with the dev channel. Take care, the dev ring will always be IT or a part of IT. Yeah? I will put them on Office Insider, so they will also get their Office builds first. And even for third-party apps, which we are mostly using Scapman or Patch My PC for, we also configure update rings in that. So if our third-party apps get patched, we also have first line of defense, second line of defense, and then we have production. And the same for my configuration profiles. And I think you've already seen that. I make my creation profiles double or triple. Yeah, per ring, I have a profile. I can also have profiles with all in it that will be tenant-wide. That will be not critical settings. But if I do some configurations in my security baseline, I will first deploy it to the dev so they can test it. Then we deploy it to Canary. We see what the impact is business-wise on business end users. And if these tests are all okay, we will adjust the production configuration profile and deploy it to production. So we'll have the testing phases in between. Is it a lot of work creating them? Just create a production one, export, import, rename it, export, import, rename it. There are a lot of great tools already for doing this. I will show you one tip of a tool that I'm using a lot. Intune management master. There. This is an amazing tool that I'm using a lot. You can use it multi-tenant. You can easily see everything in here, your settings catalog profiles, your other profiles, and you can right click, copy it, rename it, bam, it's done. Once you have your golden config, your golden baseline config, you can export it, log into a new tenant, import it, bam, and you're done again. Yeah. So it will take a lot of work in the beginning, but believe me, put some time in it. It will only give added value to the projects that you are doing, and it will make your life easier in the long run. All right. Let's go back to the power of the rings. Really important for me. Again, it's based on the group text structure, so I don't have any work putting users in the group. We will do it when we roll out the devices. If a user wants to switch from dev to CAN or from CAN to prod, we just adjust the group tag and it will get deployed. Yeah, 3 rings: development ring, Canary ring, production ring. At least 3 rings. In some environments, I have much more, but it will be development, Canary, prod 1, prod 2, prod 3, just to spreaden the deployment in production. To not do it on one day, but do it in phases. So you can also do that. Device naming is also something we can talk about. Because what's in a name? I know all device names, or at least back in the days, not now anymore. They had some logic in it. Location, laptop 01, 02, 03, 04. It was incremental. We don't do this anymore. We can't do it. I won't do it. It has no added value. What am I doing here, or what can I give you as some advice? Like I said, it has no meaning anymore for me. That device has a specific name and a sticker on it. So if you call your end users, he can give you your device name. We don't need that. We go to the portal, we look up the user. At the user, we click on devices, we see his devices, we take him over, and we help the end user, or the help desk will help it. What I mostly use is the first one, the year of rolling out or purchasing the devices. So this year we bought a batch of 500 devices. We are rolling them out with 2021% serial percent. Next year I will change it and it will be 2022. What's useful here for me, when the devices are getting older, mostly after 3 or 4 years, I will immediately see which devices I have to replace, and I will roll new ones out. They will get the new year, the serial behind it. Easy for me. What I also use sometimes, but my preference is always the year of rolling out. But for some organizations, they have different countries, so they can also use BE dash. You can even put in BE dash 2021 dash, but keep in mind that you only have a few characters left then. And I mostly also put serial at the end. Why is this handy for me? Because if I look up a user, his device, I have the device name. If I go to autopilot devices, and I paste the device name there, I can't find anything. I really have to put the serial in there. So I have the serial in my device name. So I have no issues anymore looking it up or looking in hardware properties in Intune. It's all there at the start. Yeah. So for me, also really important. Let me see, can I demo something here? I don't think so. I think you all get that. What I mostly use is a 2021 one and always a serial one. Next, I think this is the last of my litany today, the join type. People that follow me and know me know that I have a really, really cloud-first approach. I don't like on-premises, or I like it. I liked it, but I really like cloud. It makes our life so much easier. We can do so much cool things there. We can speed up deployments with cloud only. So I have a cloud-centric, cloud-first approach. Which join types do we have? We're not going to be talking about register today. Okay, it's on the slide. We're not going to be talking about it. We have two join types. Hybrid Azure AD joined, which means your device is joined on premises. It gets synced back to Azure AD. It gets registered there, not joined, and it's called Hybrid Azure AD joined. It's joined with your on-prem, and it has a trust with your on-prem, not with Azure AD. All right. We have Azure AD joined. I love Azure AD joined, so I always try to implement that. I'll also give my advice here. Azure AD joined, the name says it itself, the device is joined to Azure AD, not to your on-prem Active Directory. It's only cloud joined, so you have to trust with Azure AD, not with your on-prem AD. What are the big myths here? That I won't be able to access all my corporate resources on premises with an Azure AD joined device. That's utter bullshit, right? You can access anything with your Azure AD joined device. And it's really easy. Why? You still have your user in your domain controller in your Active Directory on premises. You sync your user with Azure AD Connect. So he will get his Kerberos token. He will have smooth login to file shares, to client server applications, to an RDS environment. It will all work. So why would you do hybrid Azure AD joined? Yeah. What do I mostly do? Easy. The current devices, I will enroll hybrid Azure AD joined. Why? Because for Azure AD joined, you need to reset all the devices. For the current devices, they are mostly a few years old already. We just enroll them hybrid joined. We can do that silently. The end users won't notice anything. 2 GPOs, we enroll them. We leverage the cloud. We take the updates from there. We push some applications, configurations. But the new ones, I will always roll out Azure AD joined. Yeah, that's how I do it. If the company says, no, it's never gonna work, just book it and prove it to them. It's your job as an IT expert or an IT system engineer or an Intune engineer to prove them wrong, all right? What is the one pitfall here? And it's here on the slide. If you have an app that requires machine authentication, Azure AD joined won't work because you don't have your Azure, your device object in your on-premises Active Directory. But trust me, I've done a lot of projects, small ones, big ones, really big ones. I've never seen it. This is something from 20 years ago, I think. It will be there in some environments. If it's there, okay, you have to think, shouldn't I migrate my apps with machine authentication to something new instead of my devices rolling out hybrid? The options are endless here. Hybrid joint devices, we can roll them out really easy, but I don't like it. We have a management plane on premises. We have our group policy objects. We have our Intune policies. They can conflict. It's always a mess. I don't like it. So I really promote Azure AD joined to my clients. And mostly they are a bit skeptic. Nah, it's never going to work. But it's easy. We enroll your current devices, hybrid joined. We will take over some workloads in Intune. The updates, it will all work. We have to take care in consideration our conflicting GPOs on-prem. We can work around it, but I'll pocket because the setup is the same. I have my setup, my security baseline is there. The only thing I need to test Azure AD joined is a new configuration profile and 2 new dynamic groups based on my group structure. But I will roll it out. I will give them the device and I say, test it for a week. What's the main advantage of Azure AD joined? We can speed up a lot of things. Hello for Business, BitLocker, it's all a smoother deployment and easier deployment, because with hybrid, you always have to keep in mind that your on-premise is the master, and you can always have conflicts there, all right? I think that's about it for my litany today. How late is it? Right on time. If there are any questions, please shoot or ping me later.